Give it a minute. Please come. Please come and say the section of reserved for you.
Sammy, tell people to turn their cell
David,
phones off.
David Sutton. Speeches should be simulcast in the garage and in the hallway. We have TV screens there. Anyone needs a more comfortable spot. Also, we have this sad moment being streamed with the help of technology today. Being streamed to Aventura, Florida, to the Saka synagogue there, and also to Vetora in Brooklyn. And I believe hundreds of people will be logging on to the site that we have. I want to thank all those involved who helped put together all this technology to make this moment available to everybody. It's difficult for me to welcome all of you, but your presence is definitely appreciated. Especially rabbis come from very far away, from Israel, here. So, before we begin the speeches, I'd like to also tell you that there are several initiatives going on to help respond to the outcry So many people who wanted to share their stories, their anecdotes, their feelings and emotions
Let me sit down.
with the rabbi and the family. So we set up what's called a Dropbox account to house all these files. Using this account, we'll collect all the materials of the rabbi, and then share these files with the various other projects that are on the rabbi. So if you can remember this email, we'll be sending it out. Start composing your thoughts, getting your pictures, getting your videos, whatever you would like to contribute to this. Please send it to an email to rlabaton@gmail.com, and we'll send you a link and instructions for you to upload your files. So much for the preliminaries, just to keep you informed about what's going on. And now I'd like to get to the speeches. The first speaker will be Rabbi Moshe Shamah, Rabbi of the Sephardic Institute and Sephardic Synagogue. Needless to say, all the speakers this evening have had a very close relationship with the rabbi. And I'd like to call Rabbi Shamah. Please, before we begin, please shut all cell phones, as we don't want the speeches interrupted unnecessarily.
Thank you, Eliott. In the past few days, the number one topic in our community has been extraordinary doings of Rabbi Ezra Labaton, his dedication to Torah principles, his sincerity, his achievements, his lasting impact. At this point, I'm not going to focus on his academic achievements, his intellectual ability, his many accomplishments in that realm. See if I get to it later. But I'm going to focus rather on his amazing dedication to his pastoral responsibilities. All rabbis are busy, and the members of every congregation have needs, all kinds of needs. But Rabbi Labaton's definition of a community rabbi's responsibility was more extensive and comprehensive than the standard definition. It reminds me of a Talmudic comment regarding our father Abraham in Masechet Ovadia. It is a beautiful Agadah, not very well known, within a larger Agadah context, which is very well known because it's taught the culture and history. And it contains a sublime message. The Gemara is talking about the beginning of Parashat Vayera. Hashem appears to Abraham. Hashem. It's Kefon Hayom. Now that phrase, Kefon Hayom, the sages took it to mean that it was the third day from the circumcision, the day when an individual, an adult who had circumcision was in the most pain. And God did not want Abraham to be disturbed on that day with passers-by, that he would do what he usually does. He'll invite them in, he'll give them refreshments, he'll give them water to wash, and so on. So he took the son, God took the son out of its sheath, and was hoping that nobody is going to choose to pass by. Abraham, when he saw nobody's passing by that day, he sent his usually trusted servant, Eliezer. He said, look, we don't have any passers-by today. It's a very hot day. But maybe you'll go look in other areas and you'll find the wayfarers. So Eliezer goes out and looks around in other places. He comes back, tells him, there's nobody out today. So Abraham says, well, your servant, I don't know if I can trust you if you're reliable enough to give me that answer. I have to find those people. So he said, I'm going to go out myself. And at that point, it's Vayira El Rashim. That's what the Gemara says. It's at that point. Now, this level of dedication comes from a different definition. What is the responsibility of an individual? Let's say the communal rabbi. There are all kinds of problems around in every congregation. And there's all kinds of needs. But the way Rabbi Labaton defined it, once he accepted the position of being the rabbi of this great congregation, he felt that all the needs of his congregants are his responsibility. Even if a problem was not brought to him, even if he didn't know about the problem, it's his business. He should try to find out. So whereas we could very well have decided that A and B and C are not the rabbi's responsibility. Nobody brought it to his attention. The individual didn't bring it to his attention. But the rabbi has to make himself accessible. He has to make himself as knowledgeable of what are the problems within that congregation. And even if they're only within that congregation to a small degree, because perhaps the person had rented in Westfield for a summer 3 years ago. And the person knows the rabbi in passing. So, let me give you a little example. One individual who lives in Brooklyn, always lived in Brooklyn, and rented in Westfield maybe 10 years ago, met Rabbi Labaton at a wedding recently, and that individual happened to be bothered by a business problem at that time. So the rabbi noticed it. There was no opportunity to do anything about it that evening. The next day, that person gets a call from the rabbi. He says, you know, it was very nice seeing you last night at the wedding. You looked a little troubled. Is there a problem on your mind? Is there something that's bothering you? And the person got such a lift out of it because here he sees that somebody's caring about his situation. And whatever was the continuation of that, I don't know, but it still is indicative of how the rabbi relates to people. I have quite a few of those type of episodes. I'm going to skip them now, just because they are really trying hard to finish all the speeches at a reasonable time. But I will say that this was typical of the rabbi. He wanted to do his chesed. He wanted to do his good deeds. He knew he could help the people, but people are not necessarily willing to just open up their problems right away. So he makes it his business to, I have to tell you one more because this person told me the story yesterday. He came over to me yesterday and told me this. I'm sorry I could say it. He came and sat next to me. He said he had some very heavy-duty problems a couple of years ago. And he lives in Brooklyn also, but he does rent in Westfield, so in the summer. So one summer day, somebody notified Rabbi Labaton that this person had a problem. Rabbi Labaton immediately called that person's home, spoke with his wife, and asked if he could come over. She said, of course, he could come over. They set a time. At that time, he comes over the house, he sits next to the gentleman, and says to him, this is how the person told me yesterday, he says to him, I'm your friend. I'm here in friendship. We talk about whatever you like to talk about. We don't have to talk about anything. I'm your friend, and I'm here. And after a few minutes, they spoke about general topics. After a few minutes, this individual told me he really did open up to the rabbi, and he really did discuss with him very serious problems that he has, that he didn't think that he was going to discuss with any rabbi, and now he was discussing it. So Rabbi Labaton recognized that the verse in the Shler, chapter 12 of the Shler, which the Gemara has a very interesting comment upon. The Agab ish yashchena. If a person has a care in his heart, well, the translation of that word yashchena, the way we read it with a sheen, yashchena, is to suppress it. But the Gemara Yomah comments, it says, not in the manner of, we're going to read it differently than the verse says. No, it seems that the Gemara has that verse written with a C. The Agab belev ish yasihena, and according to one opinion of the Gemara there, yasihena the achirim. You should relate it to others. You should speak it out. Even if you do nothing more than speaking it out with another, and you have a friend listening to that problem, that's how that Gemara in Perek Yom Kippurim, that's how that Gemara interprets that pasuk in Mishlei. That if you have a problem in your heart, you should speak it with another. Do not contain it within yourself. And then the conclusion of that pasuk with the Varatov is a good word will make the heart happy. That is sort of a follow-up. And Rabbi Labaton took that half of the pasuk also as his guideline, because he's always giving a good word to whoever it may be every time he meets that person. I'm going to skip over these type of examples. Rabbi Labaton constantly spoke about certain principles of the Torah that he would always mention a phrase that carries the idea of that principle. Selem Elohim, and Mishpat Saka, and Derech Noam, and all these kind of words. Now, but when you see it in action, the following story, which is also one of many that I'm only going to mention this one. The following story was told to me by my daughter. She was, in the summer of 2012, she was in the Allenhurst Cleaners when Rabbi Labaton walked in and didn't have any clothing in his hands. It was the cleaners that he uses. And he waited online. She said there were a number of people in the store at that moment. He waited online patiently. And when it came his turn, and my daughter was still in the store, she was waiting for something. When it came his turn, he had no garment to give or to pick up. He told the proprietress, he said, I'm here to express my condolence for the loss of your husband. This is a non-Jewish family. He said he was a very good man. We're going to miss him. And I know that it's going to be hard for you. And we went into a 1 minute condolence. And the women felt very special. And it makes the world a better world. People are not the way the rabbi talks about it. these are the items that Rabbi Labaton not really spoke about, but he constantly incorporated these principles in his life, and always with courtesy. He could have come to the front of the line and just said a few seconds condolence to the women and would not have had to wait those minutes and go back out and get a scarf. But he wouldn't think about that. He would do everything he does with courtesy. He's going to make a Kiddush Hashem from every angle. That's the way the rabbi was. Relationship with the rabbi, maybe in the past 15 or 20 years, where we spoke frequently on halachic issues. Rabbi or I would call the elder. And when Rabbi Labaton spoke on a halachic issue, it was really a pleasure to speak about whatever that question or issue was, because he researched it rationally. He studied the matter in a really scholarly way, and the conversation was open to whatever the real halakha will be. Many times, when a question is brought up and is studied seriously, a question that's not an easy question to answer, it's not something that you just open Shulchan Aruch, a question that requires analysis both of the details of the question and of the reality, because context has changed in the course of the many centuries, from Talmudic times to the times of Shulchan Aruch to our times. Of course, situations are very different, and they have to be analyzed carefully. And on some occasions, the rabbi recognizing that situation, says, I'm going to discuss this with Emily. Discuss it with Emily. If another person would hear the rabbi say that, they would say, Emily knows halakha. Well, actually, she does know halakha from a certain perspective, yes, but the rabbi knew, and he knew that I would recognize the importance of that. He knew that certain things of what the reality of a situation is, Emily would be excellent to discuss it with. And he actually said that. I had a chance today to mention that to Emily, but it was very noisy. I don't know if she actually to say it over. And on some occasions, Emily would call me with a question. So I say, well, why don't you discuss it with me? She said, no, Ezra would rather I discuss this with you. So, Rabbi Labaton was such an honest and down-to-earth person. And he and Emily were a team. This did not happen out of a clear blue sky. Parents, siblings, brought it up in a way that we can say was very special. And then he married Emily, and that was also something really extraordinary. And that just happened. Now, I'd like to say another important maxim that the rabbi never lost sight of. And that's the statement that the rabbis say, All Yisrael Arayat Zeh. All Israel, the nation of Israel, the nation that God created, that he wanted this nation to improve the world. Part of the system that God wanted was that Israel would be all members of the nation are guarantors one for another. So when situations came up, situations on the international scene, the rabbi was always there very early on and promoted others to get involved. And I'm talking now about Soviet Jewry and Ethiopian Jewry and Syrian Jewry And the situation of Israel, that there are so many needs that Israel has, and there are needs that are not being addressed sometimes by the government. There are needs, Magen needs an ambulance, or the soldiers at some base in the south of Israel were suffering because it was so hot and they had no mode of refreshment. He spearheaded building a swimming pool for them in Israel. And this also refers to the Holocaust Memorial. He was one of those who was always interested in making, we heard the other day, we were reminded about his penny campaign. Rabbi Labaton was very involved in the concept of Choser Arvin Zeh. But in addition to that, triage was an important concept by him, because we cannot limit ourselves just to Israel and Jewry, world Jewry. We have to recognize that we also have to devote some resources to the rest of the world, where there are major spots of suffering and troubles, the Darfur situation, the other African nations. And Rabbi Labaton always made a point that we cannot forget that we're part of a larger world. And the Selim Elohim applies to the non-Jews as well as to the Jews. And he actually encouraged many people to be involved, encouraged people to even visit together with teams that could help in some of those African countries and other countries. This is a part and parcel of a Jewish person living according to the standards of the Torah. Because I've gone over my time limit, and I apologize for that. I'm cutting it short. I didn't know how long this is going to be. But I will say this in conclusion, that we've all learned a great deal from Rabbi Labaton. And now that he's not here, let's not let the lessons that he taught us, and let's not let the great message that he's given us, all of us, this congregation and much broader outside the Jewish community, let's not let that start fading away. On the contrary, let's reinforce his message, and let's stand firm for those great principles of the Torah. Again,
the sound is corrected this time. Please telephone in to somebody, let us know. Otherwise, we'll make the correction more than we have. Thank you. Our next speaker needs no introduction. He's the chairman of the board, Saka, chairman of the board, Magen, Rabbi. Charlie has put his heart and soul into this Bet Knesset and has developed over the years a lifelong relationship with the Rabbi. And he is the key representative, the pillar of this community. You know, all synagogues, all institutions work in tandem with the rabbis and the lay people. Nothing is done alone. And I often refer to Charlie, and I say this again in case anyone has not heard it. The blood of this synagogue runs through your veins. B'chol ha'kavod, so shall it say.
Thank you, Eliott. I wish I wasn't able to speak. I wish I was not able to speak today. I want to thank the Labaton family for giving me the chance to speak about our beloved Rabbi Labaton, Alav Shalom. It is very difficult to speak about someone who I love very much and learned a lot from. Rabbi Labaton was a giant, and our synagogue lost its crown. In August 1982, Rabbi Ezra Labaton became the spiritual leader of Congregation Magen David of West Deal. From day one, Rabbi Labaton jumped into action, making sure we had a daily minyan, organizing classes, encouraging and inspiring people to come to shul. He focused on the youth and worked on developing them as future leaders. Who could forget our old building? As soon as you walked in, the rabbi's office was to the right, full of books, papers, and his children's artwork. This was where he loved to spend his time. In that building, we shared many experiences, celebrated many semachot, and grew into a community. We spent many hours praying, learning, socializing, and having fun. We even played some softball and ping pong on the shul grounds together. Those were the days. Rabbi Labaton encouraged not only the men, but the women to get involved as well. They planned many events and sebbets and cooked many delicious meals in our old kitchen. Rabbi Labaton introduced all of us to a whole new world. He and his wife Emily organized Yom HaAtzmaut programs and Holocaust memorial programs. They opened our minds to the plight of Jews around the world, including Ethiopia, Soviet Jewry, and our own brothers in Syria being held captive. He involved us in acts of chesed, which we never even knew existed. He involved us in political activism by inviting various politicians to our synagogue, as well as organizing trips to Washington, D.C. to support various causes, including support for the state of Israel and to rally for the rescue of Syrian Jews. Many marriages were born out of the famous barbecues hosted by our young shul. The rabbi encouraged these social events. He was very supportive when we established the Deal Sephardic Youth Center on the grounds of our synagogue. The years passed quickly. Our small congregation grew under the rabbi's leadership. Many people moved to the West Deal area because of Rabbi Labaton. In June 1992, we opened the doors of our existing synagogue building. Rabbi Labaton's commitment became even stronger, with more responsibilities and even larger congregation. One of the many things that Rabbi taught us was "Ve'ahavta l're'echa kamocha." Love your neighbor as yourself. He taught us to care for every single Jew, no matter who you are, and to have respect for all fellow men. he taught by example, by visiting the sick, hosting Yachad Shabbatons for children with special needs, helping people find jobs, and even calling the elderly on their birthdays. The rabbi loved hosting the Senior Citizens Day in our synagogue. He was also instrumental in creating many shidduchim. He established a chesed fund, which has helped many individuals and organizations. He helped us raise money to send the Sefer Torah to creation, first one since the Holocaust. We sponsored a Magen David Adom ambulance to help Israel. We raised funds for the victims of terrorism. Rabbi Labaton opened our eyes to the needs of Jews around the world. The rabbi inspired us with his energy and excitement to anything he was teaching. He taught us about the idea of Selem Elokim, that every person is created in the image of Hashem. The rabbi loved quoting the Rambam, Rabbi Soloveitchik, Ovadia Yosef, as well as many other sources. He taught daily classes in our synagogue, in addition to his famous weekly Shabbat Dirashah. He would travel to our offices in Edison, New Jersey, as well all the way to New York City, to other offices to teach classes. He taught many couples classes, both here and in Brooklyn. He was a vibrant teacher at Hillel Yeshiva for over 25 years, teaching Chumash, Navi, and Jewish philosophy. With his unique teaching style, his classes inspired everyone to want to learn more and to think for themselves. He was motivating, inspiring, and dynamic. Together with our community youth, he founded Young Magen David. They would have many programs for the kids, spearheaded by the rabbi. One of his favorite activities was planning and attending the YMD seminars and Shabbatons, both here in the shul and other locations. The rabbi loved to develop personal relationships with each student by teaching them informally while having fun at the same time. He loved going with the Hillel Yeshiva students to the Israeli Day Parade. He and Emily were very instrumental in making this part of our yeshiva. Along with all his teachings and youth leadership, his door was always open. People would come to him for advice on marital issues, business, arguments, and family problems. He counseled many community members with drug, gambling, and alcohol problems and addictions. He helped people not only from our congregation, but throughout the entire community. The rabbi was a great listener and always gave you as much time as you needed. People always felt comfortable opening up to him and had a special way of dealing with people. Everybody felt comfortable speaking to Rabbi Labaton. He always made you feel important, and he let you know it. The rabbi's dedication to his congregants was unparalleled. He officiated at many community weddings, brises, and bar mitzvahs, even when the circumstances were challenging. He even officiated a wedding in a hospital for one of our congregants because the groom's father was too sick to attend. He traveled to Vermont, Florida, and Israel to celebrate together with the Shamah of our congregants. We celebrated the synagogue's 25th anniversary together with a lavish Seder and a beautiful journal in honor of Rabbi Labaton. The inscription on the plaque read, to our dear Rabbi Labaton, just as the crown of Haram Soba was the measure of all Sifrei Torah of the community, you are the measure by which we appraise our deeds. You engage our minds, warm our hearts, and comfort our souls, and we are eternally grateful. With love, Congregation Magen David of West Deal, August 24th, 2002. The rabbi was a warrior. He would never stop. He gave the shul and its congregants his all. He was 24/7. The shul was only second to his family. Even during his illness, the rabbi never missed a day. Even when he had heavy treatments, he was always back the next morning. He was one of the most courageous people I ever knew. Who would ever think to run 5 miles a night with his conditions? The rabbi was always thanking Hashem. He would never take life for granted and always cherish every moment. During incoming storm, the rabbi would oftentimes go to the beach and watch the waves and be in awe of the power of God. He would think to himself, Marabu ma'asecha Hashem, how great are your creations, Hashem. He loved nature and science and enjoyed studying these areas in order to increase his faith in Hashem. The rabbi was so happy when there was another need for expansion. With our new Beit Midrash and Torah Center, our classes and learning have expanded with many teachers. How happy he was to see the senior citizens playing cards in the Sephardic Social Center on a daily basis, knowing they had enjoyed coming and gave them something to do with their days. It gave him pleasure to see his mother coming to enjoy the building as well. The rabbi was very supportive of the community unity events of the Jersey Shore and was proud to be part of it. Rabbi Labaton was a big believer of peace and unity. This past summer, we dedicated a Sefer Torah in honor of Rabbi Labaton. He actually helped design the beautiful case. What a momentous occasion this was. The rabbi was touched by this event, and it was something we will always remember. On a personal level, the rabbi was one of my closest friends. We loved to talk about Torah, community, sports, and the book news. The rabbi was a big New York Yankee fan and could quote any statistic. We enjoyed going to a few games together. There are no words to describe the impact of the rabbi has had on me and my entire family. He was there for us, for everything, from the big things to the small, and always with a smile. He helped shape my children's lives into the people they are today. On behalf of the synagogue and our entire community, I want to give our sincere condolences to the rabbi's mother, Mrs. Doris Labaton, and to his sisters, Mrs. Sari Hedaya and Mrs. Robin Livingston. I would also like to mention Mr. Alfred Labaton, alav shalom, the rabbi's father, whom he often spoke about and missed very much. To Mrs. Emily Labaton, there are no words to describe this loss. May Hashem give you the strength to carry on and continue the work that you do. Thank you for always being there for our congregation, playing a large role teaching the women and planning all the meaningful programs. Having you by the rabbi's side has enabled us to grow into the congregation we are today. Thank you. To Sarah and Gabby and baby Ezra, Ovadia, Devorah, Mika, and Mordechai. You should see no more sorrow and only celebrate Simachot. Thank you for sharing your father with us. He loved you also very much and was very proud of each one of you. Before I conclude, I would like to read you something written by Rabbi Labaton in our synagogue's 25th anniversary journal. Reflections by Rabbi Ezra Labaton. Dear congregation, I never dreamed of serving such a caring synagogue. I never dreamed of meeting so many fine people. I never dreamed of finding so many friends amongst the congregation of friends. I never dreamed that a rabbi could lead a life that is so meaningful and spiritually uplifting. Yet dreams come true. Borei Olam has led me to a caring synagogue, a synagogue that houses fine people, a synagogue that takes friendship seriously, a synagogue that has profound understanding of the concept of Selem Elokim and seeks to implement that understanding. Ben Adam leChavero. Rabbi, we'll continue to follow in your ways of Torah, study, your commitment and loving to love our fellow man. We all miss you dearly. Your legacy will live on forever. Amen. Amen.
Next speaker is a lifelong friend of the rabbi. When he heard the terrible news, he stopped whatever he was doing. And this man is a very, very busy man. He stopped what he was doing. He got on a plane. And he's here. The rabbi has spoken in this pulpit many, many times. He's the chief rabbi of Arayat, founder and chancellor of four Torah institutions, which provide Talmidei Chachamim all over the world. Arayat is a city of several thousand people that he founded and started many years ago. He's a personal friend of the rabbi and the family, and all of our congregation. Ezra Yedid Nafshi, Yedid. Family was saying just before Mincha, if Ezra were here, he would be looking around and he would be saying, what are all you people doing here? It's snowing outside, the weather isn't good. You shouldn't be in your cars, you should be at home. Because indeed he was a giant. A giant in intellect, a giant in Torah, a giant in Midot, a giant in Haim. This past Friday evening, after our bid,
Maybe Riskin came over to me and wept on my shoulder. There were literally a whole group of people. There were a whole group of people who had known Rabbi Ezra through the years. And maybe rightly mentioned that every conversation with him he would conclude with a quote from the Mishnah in Yom Perek Gimel. Eir Pnei HaMizrach is the face of the east, the Mizrach, still shining. It's the light of Mizrach, the Sfaradi, the Chalabi community, still glowing. Because for us Ashkenazim, from places other than Deal and Brooklyn, you, Ezra, you were the Or Pnei HaMizrach. You were the light of the Chalabi and Sfaradi world. I'd like to take the Mishnah a step further. Because the Mishnah is speaking about bringing the daily sacrifice, the Tamid Shel Shachar, every morning. And that sacrifice had to be brought by day, light, after Netzach Hamat, after sunrise. And the Mishnah begins, Amar Lehem HaMameh, the official, the Beit HaMikdash, would clearly state, Zo'u u'ro'u inigia zman hashkita. Go out and look if it's proper time for the Tamid Shel Shachar, for this daily sacrifice. And you would ask further, He'ir Pnei HaMizrach, is the light glowing on the eastern skies, Ad Sheba Hebron, even until Hebron. Ezra, you were our eastern Mizrach light. And did your light reach as far back as Hebron? What gave you the strength and the power to create what you created? Where did it come from? And the first being it came from was Avraham, identified with Hebron. Rabbi Ezra was indeed a son of Avraham, in the deepest sense of the word. Listen to how the Rambam describes the earliest years of Avraham. It's in the beginning of Hilchot Avodah Zarah. I always felt that the Rambam was describing himself. But the Rambam, to a T, is describing Rabbi Ezra, the young Rabbi Ezra, when I first met him. Kevan shenigmal eitan zeh, the Rambam says, when this titan, young child, was weaned, התחיל לשוטט בדעתו. He began to swim within the oceans of his mind. It's such an amazing, amazing phrase. L'shotet b'dato, to swim or to row within the oceans of his mind. He was young, katan, and he was pondering day and night, how can this earthly sphere continue to operate, continue to spin on its axis without an operator spinning it? V'libov m'shoteh, his mind continued to think and to ponder until it reached the truth, says the Rabbi. Until Abraham understood from his own intellect and realized that there is one God who operates the earthly sphere, that he is the creator of everything, that there is nothing that exists outside of him. Rabbi Ezra and I first met in the 60s in Israel, in a small village outside of Netanya, Neve Hanassa, Tampia Road. You, Ezra, were a young counselor, a young student at Yeshiva University. I was a young rabbi of Lincoln Square Synagogue, still an apartment student. And we were somehow drawn to each other. And you began to ask questions, profound questions, about God, about Torah, about halakha, about life. We spent hour after hour after hour walking on the beach by day and by night. I was amazed by your intellect, by your intellectual honesty, by the fact that you would never leave a subject unless you felt you understood the answer, or at least unless you felt that you had formulated the proper questions for further study. Just like Avraham, there on the shores of the Mediterranean Sea, you were mishotet b'da'atcha. You were rowing within the oceans of your mind. And just like Abraham, you emerged with a whole and perfect faith. Ve'emin b'Hashem, yachshiveh v'tzedakah. Here, Pnei HaMizrach ad HaChevron, there's this the light that shines from the face of Mizrach, your face, Ezra. Did it truly reach back to Hebron? The Rambam continues. Abraham not only queried about the God who created the world, he queried about proper ethical conduct. כי ידעתיו למען אשר יצווה את ביתו ואת פניו אחריו לשמרו דרך השם לעשות צדקה ומשפט, compassionate righteousness and moral justice. He queried about a God of the universe who said to Abraham, "Eschal goy gadol v'nivrechu b'cha kol mishpachot ha'adama." Through you shall be blessed all the families of the earth. The Torah of Abraham was a Torah that embraced and engaged the world. The Torah of Abraham was a Torah that defined V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. Reacha means every fellow human being, even the moral Gentile. That's how the Ibn Ezra saw it. That's how Arayat Ezra saw it. That's how Abraham saw it. And that a time when the profession of rabbi is not always identified with ethical integrity in Israel as well as in America. You, Ezra, because you were informed by the true ethics of Abraham, you always remained a paragon of clothing. A selfless human being to whom materialistic blandishments meant very little. Your treasures were treasures of mind and heart and spirit, books and ideas. Together with Abraham b'Chevron, you would always say, "Im nichut va'ad shlochna," not a thread nor a sheet. You would never look to gain material advantage from any individual. You looked at Balavati only to teach them, to inspire them, to help them, to befriend them. Eir Pnei HaMizrach ad shebechevron, Avraham HaIvri. The Midrash says he stood on one side of the world and the rest of the world on the other side. My beloved friend Ezra, the necessary result of your intellectual integrity, of your rational interpretation of the Torah, of your fealty to the Torah of the Rambam and of Rav Soloveitchik. This meant that you would not always be politically correct, that you often had to face powerful economic and even religious forces. And you always stood up to those forces with intellectual integrity, with a conviction that it is more important to please God than to please people. Lo taguru mipnei ish. You were an ish emet, first and last. But you stood your ground without in any way losing your graciousness and your respect for the other side and for legitimacy of other opinions. I know it costs you sometimes so much suffering. And I deeply, deeply, deeply ask for forgiveness if I had a share in some of that suffering. Eir Pnei HaMizrach ad shebechevron. You were also a disciple of Abraham, that you had your parallel to Abraham's son, your life's partner, Emily. Arayat Ahuvah, the love of your life and the light of your soul, whom you could always rely upon to give the right advice and to keep everything together, family and congregation, even in the most difficult of times. Just as she could always rely upon you to do the right thing and to garner the spiritual strength to continue to teach and to counsel and to love and to pastor, even with the last of your physical strength. About that relationship, I feel almost paternal, because we were very close friends while the courtship was happening. Much of it happened in my home. I'm not quite sure why. I thought but I have no real reason for saying so. And perhaps, after all, Mishpachat Labaton was very important. Chala b'Mishpacha, you had a grandfather, great-grandfather who's Tim or in the Machzor. And maybe the Chalabi world found it difficult to accept a Labaton with a J-Dub wife. The fact that she was a great Muchesed and the granddaughter of Yana Rebbe didn't mean much for a Chalabi world, and I can understand that. And the rabbi of some 14 Sephardi congregations now in Odom Mizrach in Israel. So I can understand. But I watched their courtship very, very, very closely. My wife. And I can tell you that it was sincere and profound, passionate, and pure. And it demonstrated strength of character, both very special. Eliott Braha, will there still be a light emblazoning Mizrach now that you are no longer in the land of the living? I would say that the answer lies in the fact that you, Ezra, my beloved friend Rabbi Ezra, you were not only a true son of Abraham, but you were in actuality a Gilgul, a soul transmigration of your ultimate namesake, Ezra Habava. Chazal teach us, Yishmo came. Ezra was called a Sofer and Ezra was called a Kohen. A Sofer and Ish Sefer. And for you, Rabbi Ezra, Sofer is a worthy soul. You love books in general. You especially loved your own books. You were very proud of them. And you were a true Melamed Torah Israel Yahweh. A thoroughgoing scholar. Superhumanly, having had your PhD dissertation approved even during this last period of your illness. Dissertation on Rabbeinu Avram ben Harambam, because his Torah was your Torah, and his approach was yours. And when the official would ask the question, Hayir Pnei HaMizrach, and if the response was in the positive, then they would shout, Barkai, Barak, Mavlik, lightning. Because your Torah scholarship was lightning and enlightening, clear, precise, bringing light and logic to the text, as well as to our entire Jewish. You know, it's amazing, however. And the president said it so very, very well and beautifully. It's amazing. You know, my Shamah said it so very well and beautifully. Usually an Ish Sefer, a Sofer, an Ezra HaSofer, is not a pastor, has no patience for pastor, is a book person, but not a people person. You were a people person. You made Torah accessible to everybody, even those those who couldn't really grasp your scholarship. The Sefer Nehemiah says in Perek Chet about Ezra, "V'yavi Ezra Kohen et haTorah lifnei hakahal." He brought it to the congregation, to the community. V'yish v'ad isha, to men and women alike. Meforash, interpreted in accordance with all the great Mefarshim, interpreters of the Torah, especially the great halachic interpreters, with rachamim, with amazing compassion. Chacham Ovadia did it always. Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, Rabbi Soloveitchik did it always. Rabbi Labaton did it. So the Seichel, you made the Torah accessible to those who demanded a logical Torah. So Seichel Ezra HaSofer. So Seichel the Torah of the Rambam, Rav Soloveitchik, Chacham Ovadia. And if you ask about your legacy, the real secret to someone who keeps 24/7 with no vacations, it's because the Shinantam Levadim, you shall teach Torah diligently to your children, explained by Chazal, Elohim Talmidecha, the Kohanim, the students and your congregants, who are always considered your children. You love your student congregants, and you love your own children. There is no time out for the children and no time out from the congregants. The Ezra Hechim Levavo L'Drosh Torah Hashem La'asot U'Lelamed L'Israel. You have to prepare your heart, Ezra HaSofer, for it, if you're going to be a true Kohen, pastor, Rebbe, teacher. Heyu v'talmidav shel Aaron, ohev shalom v'rodev shalom, ohev et habriot v'kotam. Your love for the Torah and your love for your students came together. And your love included tremendous acceptance. Ohev et habriot. It can sometimes be non-Jewish students. It can sometimes be students who are far away from the Jews. But you have to love them. And you have to love them unconditionally. And that will always bear fruit. You know, the most important students you really had and have are very special children. We had a few quiet moments in July, but you already knew that your family was planning to be around you. You said to me, and I wrote the words down when I left the house. You know what makes me proudest of all? That my children are also my students. They know and they appreciate my Torah. And that means more to me than they will ever know. Ezra, Yedidi Aovi, you were taken from us too early, but you merited much. You raised myriads of knowledgeable, loving, caring, and sensitive students who will continue to raise the baton. You created a community l'tiferet that will bring your Torah for generations into the future. Most of all, you and Emily raised a unique family of sensitive and committed children. Sarah, Rabbi, Ovadia, Devorah, Mordechai, each a unique gem. You raised students whom you love as if they were your children. And you raised loving and beloved children who were also proud to be your students. What more can anyone ever ask of God or of life? What more can Rav Mechanech ever wish for? Ezra Labaton. Ma'azaracha b'chaim, v'talmidecha b'chaim, ובמיוחד צלחה שהם תלמידיך. You too remain alive. ועומי עד, ובניין עדיה, ועומי עולם. יהי זכרך.
Rabbi, we need Rabbi. You're walking out, Rabbi.
Next speaker was part of our family here. Magen Rabbi. For several years, we got to know him. Then he moved on to other places. And now he finds himself not only back in Spain, back in our community as Rabbi Eliott, better known as the Haim. Rabbi Haim.
From Israel. After having some experience, that was my first position in America. I sat here in Shabbat, and I started listening to the Rabbi's speeches. I was totally spirited. I said to myself, this is how the Rabbi delivers his speech in America. I better forget about it. No way I can do it. With no disrespect to any other rabbis, but it took me some time to realize that Rabbi Labaton was the exception rather than the norm. So I mustered some courage. But still, to speak of this topic, and remembering all the eloquent speeches, the words that I heard from here, I wasn't able to write a speech. I have like 5 minutes. decided I would just speak from the heart. And I have to excuse. I did write a piece, and many people came to me and said that it was a beautiful piece, and I feel embarrassed. And I'll illustrate by a story. The famous song, the beautiful poem of Naomi Shemetz, about Yerushalayim, Yerushalayim Shel originally had 3 stanzas. The second one starting with Haim Shukrot Haim Terashuk Lekam. How come the city is abandoned, the water wells are dry? And then in 1967, after an epidemic, she added a footnote correcting the wrong, saying, Chazal they have returned to the water. There are multitudes in the market plaza. And there's a recording of Naomi Shemer performing this song. The soldier that liberated Yerushalayim. And they give her a standing ovation at the end of the song, and she tells them, קל מאוד לשנות שיר, הרבה יותר קשה לשנות עיר. It's not a big deal to write a new stanza to the poem. To change a city, that's an achievement. It's not a big deal. It's difficult. But it's not so difficult to write, to describe a special life. It's tremendously difficult to live, to be that person. So I just want to share some of the diary of a couple instances that I had in the last couple of weeks with the Rabbi. I had the merit to be informed that he sees visitors, so I was able to come and visit and sit and talk with him and Emma before I went. And it was of course about Jewish education and Jewish research, the future of the Jewish society. What about the difference in the Jewish society? And what are we going to do? Because you see, Rabbi Labaton was not a man of words. He was not a man of words. No, he was a man of words in the sense that when you spoke to him, you felt that there are thousands and millions of words bustling in his head like a raging volcano about to blow up. And sometimes they managed. Sometimes I had to catch the train of thought and to fill in the gaps because he spoke so fast. But he was a master of words. He controlled them, he governed them, and he knew to put them together, to craft a thought, how to deliver it to you. But he was a man of action. The words were just tools to act. He was an activist. Tikkun Olam was an ongoing act that was distilled into each and every word he said. And I saw that as I walked into the funeral home on Thursday and I looked at the faces of the people, and what I saw was, or I felt, to use an analogy from the world he loved so much, cosmology, that a supernova just exploded here, of the emotional life, the spiritual life, the educational life that he led. And it imprinted each and every one in that room. The people were there. Each one of them shared a spark of his wisdom in a different way. The elderly people, the young students, friends, people were counseled by him. I saw in each one of them a different emotion, but it was a reflection of him. He embedded his soul in them. And when I spoke over the Shabbat to people, and people started crying, we're tearing up. Every time I mention we're tearing up, we tear up. And I knew that the reason we're crying is not just because we're thinking of the suffering that he had to endure. Not just because we think of a beautiful life cut short, but also because we realized in a certain way that there was a beauty in this world. That there was one man who was capable of achieving amazing heights. purity. And as long as he was there, we were comforted. Someone is doing it for us. We might not be able to do it, but he's there. But now it's gone. Now we know there's a gaping hole in our hearts, in our lives, and we don't know if we can make up for it. And it brought to my mind a story that I've heard many, many times, but never understood. A story from the Gemara, quoted in the Geonim, about what happened when Rabbi passed away, and he had many beautiful practices. And his disciples, 10 of his disciples, decided to take upon themselves his practices to make sure that they don't die with him. And what were his practices? He never walked for a mot without a kippah, without covering his hair, his head. In the certain community, probably. But back then, it was an achievement, or maybe we refer to a second cover, whatever, whichever way we want to take it. He never walked for amot begilui harosh. He never walked for amot bekomas kufa, standing straight. Always a little bent to feel that that Hashem fills the whole world. And one student took this halagah, this practice of not walking bekomas kufa, and the other one took the other one to not walk begilui harosh. And I didn't understand. What is the problem? Can one person both walk, not bekomas kufa and not begilui harosh? And there's more. He kept shalosh seudot on Shabbat. He wouldn't look to the right and to the left. He wouldn't walk into the synagogue after everybody sat down, so he wouldn't force the people to give him kavod. Lo haya mafsi'a al rashi kodesh. He would come modestly, humbly, from another door. That's a little more difficult. But then there's another one. If he felt that someone was upset with him, he would go and would not come down until he made peace with that person. Even if he thought that he was not the one who offended the other guy. That's difficult. Now that's difficult. And I asked myself, how can you put the two in the same category? Appeasing someone who offended you, or who thinks he was offended by you, and not walking for amot with the kippah? What's the comparison? How does it go together? And then I realized this week, hearing and recalling all our experiences, all the lessons that I've learned from him, and from Emily, and from the family, I realized that you really needed 10 people to pick up where Rav left. Because they were all connected. These are not mannerisms that you could just pick up. These are not halachot that you could do, which are an external thing. The external manifestation of the soul, that's what it is. For Rav, if he walks arba amot, he does not walk arba amot begilui harosh, because he feels in all of his essence, all of his being, that he's not alone in the world. There's divine providence. There's reverence. The same for Komas Kufa. If he doesn't ask for kavod from people, it's because he truly feels humble. To pick up that quality, you can do that. People can do that. We know a lot of people who are humble, and then they say, look how humble I am. Don't I deserve some respect? Right? You can't do that. To appease someone who thinks you offended him takes courage. And we argued about that. I would tell him that he shouldn't forgive. And he said, I forgive. No matter what, I want peace. I want unity. He wanted to have the United States of Am Yisrael. It was actually the United States of Ezra Labaton. But united, truly united. Because all of his actions, like the Rambam describes a wholesome person, all of his actions were directed in one goal. Tikkun olam, ahavat ha'adam, doing what's right, No discounts. He did it gently. He did it lovingly. And he taught others to do it in his own way. So where do we pick up? What do you want to be? Which character trait do you want to pick up? The great educator that he was? The community builder? The freedom fighter? The compassionate pastor? The loving father? Like Charlie mentioned before there was a wall on Facebook, there was a wall on Rabbi Labaton's wall in the office. More and more and more artwork. There was no room. He was so proud of it. We can pick one of them. Can we internalize them? Can we own it in a way that it changes our being, it changes ourselves, and we're not the same person that we were before? Very difficult. But he would want us to do that. It's exactly what he would have wanted us to do. To pick up from where he left, to look at his qualities and his character traits, the website where people share stories about him, and think, what is the one lesson that I learned from him, where I can start, and I can change the world and change myself. If you would have thought it's impossible, you'd say, yeah, it's very difficult. But there's a way to do it. And the way to do it is another state of mind that he was always at. And that is, he was always in Bereshit. I think that he was always in Bereshit. Maaseh Merkava and Maaseh Bereshit came together. The beauty of creation and the question and the quest to understand divinity, he was always there. He always discovered the world with wonder as if it was the first day of creation. As if morning is broken like the first morning. That's how he felt. If you don't feel like that, if you feel that today is just like yesterday and I can go about my business without changing the world or changing myself, then you're a slave. Abdi Azman. To be able to not be shackled by the failures of the past, by the pain of the past, but also not to be lulled and complacent by that. And to know that you have to continue fighting and striving and learning and growing and changing and affecting. This is his lesson. I started with an Israeli song, and I'll end with another one. And I think that's the message that he would have wanted to impart to us. Lakum mahar b'boker im shir chadash balev. With all the pain, all the sorrow, the way he carried himself all these last years, never wanting people to talk about it. Even when I came to visit him, there was no discussion of how he's feeling because it's not important. What can I do to help him? Our doctors will take care of that. Let's talk about the Jewish world. Let's talk about activism. Let's change the world now. Wake up tomorrow morning with a new soul in our heart. With strength and with pain. Hear the music of creation, the music of the beauty of the human soul, the beauty that he saw in each and every one, his fellow man, of the citizens of the United States of Ezra. It's a beautiful country. His wife, and his children, and his followers, and we pick up from where he left, and we feel as if it's Bereshit, if it's the first moment, as if nothing was achieved before, but of course we learn from the past, and we take it with us, and we continue strong.
There will just be two more speakers. And the last one will be the children, Mordechai and Ovadia. We do have a table inside. I was just told a moment ago there are over 1,000 people logged on. Various cities. places. I'd like to introduce now the Rabbi's closest friend, a personal friend, our community leader, Mr. Sam Mason. David? David Sutton, still here?
Rabbi Ezra Labaton has left an indelible impression on so many of us here today. Not only did he touch the lives of his friends, his family, his friends, his students, and his congregants, but also hundreds of others from all walks of life who have come to him for advice and direction. For those of us who knew him more intimately, we know he was always available to help and guide others. From a young man in crisis calling after midnight to the dinner time knock on the door to mediate between a quarreling couple. When we talked in his office, not more than 5 minutes went by before somebody called with an urgent problem or came by in need of his immediate help. If we went to a restaurant, before we opened the menu, somebody came up to us and needed to ask the rabbi a quick question. He was totally dedicated to his business. We first became friends in Deal in the summer of 1969. In Deal at that time, there were less than 50 Syrian families living in the area. We quickly gravitated to each other. It was obvious. We always enjoyed each other's company and spent countless Sunday nights together. We would go to the Planters Peanut Store in Asbury Park, buy a bag of peanuts, a can of soda, and then spend the rest of the night way past midnight walking on the beach in Montana. We usually spoke about things we found very important: the meaning of life, Jewish values and ethics, the challenges of Judaism faced in our community, etc., etc. Of course, we also discussed the evil Yankees and the miracle Mets. We did win the pennant. We won the World Series. We both attended Yeshiva University and even shared a few classes together. I tried to get him to participate in some of the fun things of dorm life, like the time we bought grapes in a vat and started to make wine in our room. We left the window open, we forgot it open, we went to class, and we came by, we came back, and there were 10,000 mosquitoes in there. Well, maybe the time we bought a pet monkey, little did we know, within a week he would be escaping and be running away around someplace in Manhattan. Or going to Joe's Deli in the Bronx and coming back and playing 5-hour risk games on Thursday nights. Truthfully, I wasn't that successful in luring him to that. Matter of fact, I couldn't even get him to skip a page of the signed book when I was trying to get him to buy the Cliff Notes. Well, while I was trying to corrupt him, he really had other plans for us. He convinced me we should go to something called seminar. I had never heard of seminar. Nobody in the Syrian community had heard of seminar. I had no interest in going. This seminar was for high school students who had never attended yeshiva. In 5 days, you could get a young man or woman to decide to change the course of their lives forever. I am going to become kosher. I am becoming Shomer Shabbat. I am switching and going to yeshiva. These things happen by the dozens in every single seminar. It was a magical experience. As it turned out, not one person in the entire seminar had ever met a Spanish people. Not one. So they all crowded around us. They wanted to know so much more about us. Tell us about the differences between Ashkenazim and Sfaradim. We know about the rice on Pesach, but tell us more. Okay, I looked at Rabbi Labaton, Ezra. I said, let's have a little fun. Okay. Guys, there are some serious differences. Like what? Well, we put tefillin on our legs. We turned to Ezra. He says it's true. Why? Ezra explained it was to have our prayers raised to God before theirs. Anything else? Well, there are a few other things. Like what? Well, mikveh. Yeah? What about mikveh? Parents come from the desert. We have no water in the desert. We come from the desert. There's no water. Look at Ezra. He says it's true. Our mikvehs are pineapples. That was our first seminar. Eventually, we took this thing very seriously. We ended up running dozens and dozens of seminars in the community, both in Brooklyn and in the Jersey Shore. Eventually, this program was taken over by our own yeshiva, who added it to the curriculum. Well, I heard Rabbi Riskin's story about Ezra's courtship, and it's true. Everything he said is true. But there was another side to that courtship that I was privileged. As you know, back in those days, Rabbi Labaton was not great at making very profound, eternal decisions. We watched them date, and eventually, everybody understood these two are perfect for each other. These two are getting married. But you know, Ezra is an existential problem that make sure it exists. Guys, you would be here today if I was. What am I going to do? This guy came up with questions and excuses. Okay, I don't have to give him a little push. So what we do, we decided to see Rabbi Yosef. Okay? The rabbi starts asking questions. Okay, tell me about it. How about the family? I'm Rabbi. I said, yeah, beautiful. You go. The best. For that. My chavruta. Etc., etc. Rabbi looks, so let me understand this. You're telling me she's a 10 out of 10? Home run? Yeah. So now I look at her and I see his face. It's sinking in. No way out. Ezra, your goose is cooked. Let's talk about what you're going to propose. In all these years, Nancy and I only had the privilege of going on vacation with Ezra and Emily once. That is, once without the children. So, you know, it was impossible to get into the shul. When we decided to go out to Miami, it turns out we went out after night to Coconut Grove. All of a sudden, two huge guys started to yell at each other, quickly elevated into something new. Ezra turned around, walked back, and somehow managed to separate these two guys and calm things down. These were two huge guys. Why did you get involved in these guys? That's the way he was, being there for others, Jews and non-Jews alike. It was moments like this that reminded me of how special a person was. My wife Nancy is privileged to run the Morris Life Franco Cancer Center. People with cancer have tough times, but every now and then there is somebody that comes into the center and is so depressed, so down and out, without hope. We know that if we don't add hope to their lives, they will not make it, even if their cancer is not that serious. So when a case like that comes in, we do not send it to the social worker, we then send it to our psychologist. In most cases, we send it to Rabbi Ezra Labaton. He, in his own way, is the man who lived to inspire you to fight, give you hope, show you there's light in the end of the tunnel, and make sure you take care of yourself as best you can. The truth of the matter is, our laurel walks were the most precious times we shared. Those memories are amongst my favorite possessions. Even during the last weeks, there were a few good days when we were still able to go on our walks. We sat at the lake or on the boardwalk. Although we could spend at most an hour, the discussions were as thought-provoking and inspiring as the discussions from decades ago. The problems of the community, the tuition crisis, the divorce epidemic, Jewish ethics and values, a question about the Ramban, and a thought from the Rabbi. All the speakers touched on so many of his wonderful qualities. They really understood him, appreciated him. As time goes by, some of the memories may fade, yet many will last forever. Rabbi Labaton was my classmate, my confidant, my compass, my inspiration, my rabbi, and my once-in-a-lifetime friend. I will always love him.
Our last speakers will be Ovadia and Mordechai.
We really just wanted to thank everyone for coming. This has obviously been a very hard week. So ready to head out that meeting. And I would just say very quickly, it's been hard. I look at everyone here with incredible comfort. And as we had to make sort of decisions to move forward, I've been asking myself, what would that do? And I found that the answer has always been very clear. And it's been guiding me personally these last few days. And it's been a great comfort having everyone here. It's a huge family, and we really appreciate it.
I would just like to add that I hope all the words the family heard tonight are sources of consolation and Haim, Ezra Labaton, Sarah Hidayah, Rabbi Levinson, their husbands and children, and grandchildren, to Sarah and Rabbi, little Ezra, to Ovadia, Laura and Micah, to Mordechai, to the Posner family, Stein family, Frieden family, all families, all our friends who are here, every person, and something special to the Rabbi. And I hope that we continue to share happy times together. Ezra Hashem, this time, I'd like to give the mic over to Rabbi Saul Kassan, who will be doing the Hashkalah. After the Hashkalah, we will be doing the Bihana and Kaddish. And as I urge people to pay Shabbat, those people according to Halakha are able, willing, feel comfortable joining in the Kaddish. Rabbi is like a parent, and I believe that it's perfectly okay to join the Kaddish together, whoever feels comfortable doing so. Bye-bye.
We can hear.
Say a special Hashkalah.
הרחמן עין מעשה בעזר נתון מן השווה אדם מצרפלה ואדם יתיק תלונה. מעלה תקנה שצטן תלך פעלת לחופים אחרים בן אדם. מה יקר לחסרים? עמי אדם ניסות שעליך וחסרים. וליון נדשו לפתח וחפרה טוב שם שם טוב יום המוות טוב כך סוף דבר הכל שמע ותארים יראה צריך כתב שלא חובק לאדם יעלזו חסמי חולים ויענו חוש פרוטה ומוכר נכונה בשיבה הגנה תחת על שכנה מעלת קדושים וחורים באזור הרקיע מהירים מזהירים וחידוש הסמים וחתרת השנים והרחקת פשע והקרבת ישע וחמלה וחנינה מלפני שופן עונה וחולה כאן חבל וחולה הבא שם כמובן מקצת ישיבה תמיד ששם לטור הרב וחלור הרב של כנסת מגן דוד עזרא בן מזרע רוח ארנית מחמד אבן תתהל אמן הדרך תיקון תלהה מלא שמיה ורעה נטו חמיד לחוץ להשמור עליו עבודי אליו השלום שבו יהיה שלום ולפי יראו שלום עמוק לעם כמותם הולך לבוא הוא בקרוב מזרע ששברים למות עמו כבר רחמים מהסלקות וכן ירצון מה אמר המצח מחר ועזור כאן ואף פנים וחד עמו יסיר מאחו עד כבוד בית יחיו מפיך נבלתי יכולון הקיצור והאנוש לפני אחת כתב רוח הזכה ועד שחיים תכיר והוא רחמי חטא יבון לא של השירקו ולא יגיד כל חמתו עמד ושירה עמד עמנו
Bihana Rakashon, Omer Atzam Kadosh Baruch Hu Lezakot El Yisrael Leticha, Prepare thy hand for Shemah, Adonai Chafes Ma'aseh Tov, V'Yodil Torah V'Yadir, V'Yodil Shemei Rabah,
Israel, That who?
May I be this time? The social hall will be open for the women. And then the Rabbi, Hazani discuss the young Kavod, we're still here. I'd like you to pray a beat. You are still here, please come forward. Hazani discuss the young. I don't think it's very long. It's actually what's happening. The women, please go into the social hall. Those who want to stay, prepare feet. Let's go into the other section. Rabbi Ovadia. The Labotons will be receiving the people.